Coming up on Locked On Dodgers, former Dodger Julio Urias will not face felony charges after being arrested late last season. He could still face misdemeanor charges, and he's still very likely to face discipline by Major League Baseball, but there is some development there that we will talk about. Also, Shota Imanaga, a Japanese left-handed pitcher who we've talked about as a potential fit for the Dodgers in free agency, is apparently not signing with the Dodgers and signing with the Cubs instead. We'll talk about that. And we will talk about the MLB offseason and whether it needs to be tweaked to get a little bit more excitement. That's what's on tap. So let's get Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Dodger fans, this is Locked On Dodgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you to our everydayers for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Remember, this show is free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. Please subscribe wherever you're watching or listening right now. My name is Jeff Snider, and my co-host is Vince Samperio, although it's just me today. Vince and I are both lifelong Dodger fans, just like a lot of you. We've also both spent time covering the Dodgers in the press box and the locker room, so we're not quite insiders, but we bring you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any $5 bet. That's $150 no matter what. Just place a $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And speaking of getting started, let's get started here. Unfortunately, the only Dodgers-related news on Tuesday was about a former Dodger, Julio Urias, former Dodgers pitcher, star, fan favorite at times, on the mound when the Dodgers won the 2020 World Series. As you'll recall, he was arrested late last season after a domestic incident at I believe it was an LAFC game. And he was arrested. He was placed on administrative leave for the rest of the season. Didn't pitch again for the Dodgers and most likely won't, as we'll get into. He's now a free agent. But it was announced on Tuesday that he will not face felony charges for the incident. That's the Los Angeles district attorney. Now it's being referred to the city attorney for potential misdemeanor charges. And we'll see. We want to start first, I guess, by saying we're going to talk a little bit about what he was accused of, et cetera, et cetera. And so if you are one who doesn't handle that kind of conversation well, skip forward and, to about the, 8 or 10 minute mark and jump to the next segment. But we're not going to get too gratuitous in it, but, there will be some conversation about that. Julio was accused of, I don't even know how to put it. He was accused of basically beating up whoever he was with. We never did get an identification of the victim, the accused victim, alleged victim. It was, I'm not going to speculate on who it was, but whoever he was with, the charge says he engaged in an argument whereby the defendant pushed the victim against the fence and pulled her by the hair or shoulders, according to the county's report. I'm reading this from Fabian Ardaya's article in The Athletic. And then it says, however, the county deemed that, quote, neither the victim's injuries nor the defendant's criminal history justify a felony filing. That's kind of interesting, I guess, that one of the things they cited is that the victim's injuries don't justify felony filing, because the report at the time was that it looked like she had been punched in the face. And so, it's hard to really know what that means. We also know, just a fact of life is that domestic violence issues are very hard to prosecute because often the victim loves the accused and maybe isn't willing to testify. I'm not saying that's the case here necessarily. Maybe we'll get more details, maybe we won't. But without testimony from the alleged victim, it can be hard to convict someone, and district attorneys, for better or for worse, are in the business of getting convictions. And so the fact that they are not filing felony charges, basically the only thing we know for sure is that means the district attorney didn't think that they had enough evidence to ensure a conviction. That doesn't necessarily mean that they think he's innocent. Doesn't mean that they don't. But we saw this with Trevor Bauer as well. There's often a misunderstanding of what no felony charges filed means. It doesn't mean we think he's innocent. And by we, I mean the district attorney. That was in quotes. What it means is the district attorney saying, we're not sure we can convict him. And that might be because he's innocent in some cases. So I wasn't there at the LAFC game when Julio's incident happened. I wasn't a witness to it. All I know is what I've read. And so my general policy on things like this is to not have a strong opinion on something I don't know anything about. Things like this. And that's generally my mantra in life. If I don't know about it, I don't have a strong opinion about it. If I want to have a strong opinion, I make sure I get information first. And so what this means for Julio baseball wise, well, first we'll say Dodgers wise. I would bet my left leg that Julio has thrown his last pitch for the Dodgers. I don't think he suddenly becomes an option for the Dodgers, even if he isn't suspended by the league, or if he is suspended, once he's done with that suspension. I don't think he's an option for the Dodgers. I think that the Dodgers stood by Julio after his 2019 arrest and suspension. And I was glad they did. I think that there was plenty of reason to think that a 22-year-old kid, I think everybody's a kid. When you're my age, they all look like kids. But a young ball player, made a mistake. Everybody seemed to agree that it wasn't an assault. It was a misunderstanding that, he probably let his anger get the best of him in a way he shouldn't have. He accepted his suspension. He accepted anger management, all that. And I think it was good that the Dodgers stuck by him. Not like they would have had any option anyway. They were kind of bound by the league's domestic violence policy to stick by him. But I was glad they did. They're not under any such obligation now. And there were, even from a baseball standpoint, there were reasons to worry about Julio. Before this happened, he was expected to be the top pitcher on the free agent market. And, he's young and has been very good at times. But also there were concerns. We talked before all this happened, just from a purely baseball standpoint, how comfortable are you giving him a super long contract? And, we were never super comfortable with it. And so this just adds to that. But mostly from the Dodgers standpoint, I think after the Bauer incident and the previous Julio incident, I think the Dodgers just don't have any interest in, they wouldn't have any interest in getting back into the Julio business at this point. Which is a bummer because Julio, there was a lot of potential for him, as a Mexican left-handed pitcher, a lot of parallels to Fernando, obviously, that, what might have been, but it's not going to be. From a Major League Baseball standpoint, they will wait and see if the city attorney files misdemeanor charges. If they don't, or if they do, either way, at some point, we will find out what MLB's discipline is going to be. I think Julio will surely be suspended. The domestic violence policy is such that it doesn't require a conviction or even a criminal charge to be brought. In fact, I don't know of anybody who's ever been convicted of domestic violence among the people in MLB's history who have been suspended under this policy, which has existed for about 8 or 9 years now. There have never been convictions. There have been plenty of suspensions. And so Julio will be suspended. Will it be a Trevor Bauer length suspension, or will it be, more of a 20 game, 30 game? He is a repeat offender technically, because he would be the first person ever suspended twice under this policy. I'm sure they'd take that into account. So we'll see. But chances are he will be eligible to pitch at some point in 2024. It won't be for the Dodgers though. And I think it'll be interesting to see if any team takes a chance on him. A lot of it will come down to his attitude, his level of contrition, all of that. So That's kind of all I have to say about Julio on this. It's news, and so we have to talk about it. But I'm going to move on, and I'm going to come back and talk about another left-handed pitcher who also won't be pitching for the Dodgers in 2024, Shota Imanaga. So thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen, and please keep it Locked On Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Look, we used to say you had to win your $5 bet to get your $150 in bonus bets. You don't even have to win anymore. You could be terrible at betting, or you can take a long shot. Go with something, and it doesn't even have to be a money line bet, any bet. So go with the craziest thing where put $5 down and have a chance to win, $1,000. Go for it, because worst case scenario, you lose your $5, but you get $150 in bonus bets. $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. And the app is so easy to use. There are so many different ways to bet, like live same game parlays. You can find bets in the new Explore tab. You can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and more. So visit fanduel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NBA, of the NFL. Sorry. All right, I am back. I want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning, especially you everydayers. If you're not an everydayer, it's easy to become one. Just watch or listen every weekday morning. We really appreciate all of our everydayers. You can become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. Just a few bucks a month. You can support us by having access to our text messages that we send out throughout the day with our thoughts on breaking news or rumors or whatever. Plus, you can text us back. We can have conversations there. It's a lot of fun. Like I said, a few bucks a month, and there's a free 14-day trial. So check it out at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. And remember, we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And Locked On has 2 24/7 streaming channels on YouTube that might interest you. One is called Locked On Sports Today. The other one is Locked On Sports Los Angeles. Same kind of channel, except Locked On Sports Los Angeles focuses specifically on LA sports, and obviously Locked On Sports Today is the whole country. So check out both of those on YouTube, streaming 24/7. And with that said, let's move into our next topic. Shota Imanaga was the second best player coming from the MPB in Japan, available in free agency this offseason. The best was, of course, Yoshinobu Yamamoto. The Dodgers already signed him. They also already signed former MPB star Shohei Ohtani. And we have talked in the past about them making it a clean sweep and going for Shota Imanaga too. That won't happen. And it's not surprising. We got word late last week that the Dodgers were not one of the finalists. And at that point, it was the Red Sox, Cubs, Angels, and Giants. And then we heard on Tuesday morning, I think, that both the Angels and the Giants were looking elsewhere. So it was kind of down to the Cubs and Red Sox, although one report said that it was down to 5 teams that included the Cubs and Red Sox. So maybe there were some mystery teams involved. In the end, it appears he's going to the Cubs. We haven't heard terms of the deal yet. We don't know how long the contract is. He's about 4 or 5 years older than Yamamoto. Don't know how long the contract is, how much per year, any of that. But we do know that assuming Imanaga passes his physical on Wednesday, he will be signing with the Cubs sometime before Thursday, when his that was his deadline to sign because of his posting date. He will be going to the Cubs. And, talking about this from a Dodger standpoint, we talked about how Imanaga would have been a good fit for the Dodgers, especially this year. They do, I don't know if they need another starting pitcher, but it would be nice to have another starting pitcher, and having a lefty would have been nice. I did a whole episode or a whole segment on an episode about whether the Dodgers actually need a lefty starter. I don't think it's a need, but if there's a good pitcher available who is left-handed, no harm done there. So Imanaga would have been a fit in a lot of ways. One of the things I realized, though, last week when we got the report that the Dodgers were out on Imanaga, that came around the same time that we heard rumors that the Dodgers are going to be all in on Roki Sasaki next offseason. And signing both Imanaga and Sasaki doesn't make a lot of sense, simply because of, I talked on Monday's episode, I think, about the Dodgers pitching staff next year already as it stands right now. They have Tyler Glasnow and Yoshinobu Yamamoto and Shohei Ohtani coming back and Bobby Miller. Plus they have, maybe Walker Buehler will be back. He'll be a free agent. So we don't know, but they'll have Dustin May coming back from Tommy John, Tony Gonsolin coming back from Tommy John, plus Landon Knack and Nick Frasso and Kyle Hurt and River Ryan and just so many pitchers. And I'm probably forgetting one or two. I forgot to mention May and Gonsolin when I talked about those on Monday. There's just so many pitchers. And that's even if they don't add anybody else this offseason. Plus, if they were to go after Roki Sasaki next offseason, like it's a glut of starting pitching. And so it makes sense that the Dodgers wouldn't necessarily want to go into a multi-year contract right now. That's why a guy like Corbin Burns might make more sense because he is, a rental. He only has 1 year left on his deal. And then he said he's going to free agency. And so when you have 3 guys coming back from Tommy John surgery in 2025, signing or acquiring a guy who's just here for 2024 might make a lot of sense. And in that way, Imanaga doesn't make as much sense. We talked on Monday about the possibility of Jesus Luzardo from the Marlins. He would be under team control for a few years. And so that's kind of one of the reasons why he maybe doesn't make as much sense, simply because it just adds to the logjam in 2025. Now, there are reasons there's ways to get rid of some of that logjam. Obviously, some of those young pitchers who are currently in the minors could be trade bait if the Dodgers could get enough value for them. But also, Dustin May, he's had Tommy John surgery. He throws hard. Like, is he a guy who they might consider converting to a bullpen role? You picture Dustin May throwing 102 out of the bullpen, could be a pretty decent closer type. A lot of people think Nick Frasso long-term is more of a reliever. Kyle Hurt came up. He pitched in 1 game for the Dodgers, and that was in relief. And so it was 2 innings, but he could be a reliever in the future. There's a lot of options, whether it's trades or role changes or whatever. But signing a guy like Shota Imanaga, the more I thought about it in conjunction with Roki Sasaki, I just didn't think it made a lot of sense. And that's assuming the reports are correct, that the Dodgers are going to be all in on Roki Sasaki, which I'm totally in favor of. Sasaki, we just talked about him last week, right before that report came out. Very, very talented, very exciting. And so, it makes sense the Dodgers are going to be all in on him. Hopefully he, with Ohtani and Yamamoto, both with the Dodgers, hopefully that's a selling point for Sasaki. But we'll see next year. But the report said the Dodgers have been scouting Sasaki since he was in high school and have wanted him since then. Imanaga, like I said, we don't know the terms of his contract. I do think he's going to be pretty darn good for the next couple of years. He has a higher strikeout rate than Yamamoto. Doesn't have the pure stuff of Yamamoto, but he is, by all accounts, an excellent pitcher. And so it makes a lot of sense for the Cubs. They've lost Marcus Stroman. They have Justin Steele coming off a career year. They have Kyle Hendricks, who has to fall off a cliff at some point. They have, I think, Jameson Taillon. And so they needed a starting pitcher. And I think that Imanaga is a really, really good pickup for them. They also have Seiya Suzuki. And so Imanaga has a fellow countryman there. And, all in all, like him going to the Cubs, when you think about the other, like the Giants were one of the teams in on him. I am in favor of Imanaga not being on the Giants, a team the Dodgers are going to face 13 times. I am in favor of nobody ever signing with the Giants, honestly. And that's what we've had so far. I think the Giants are going to focus all their effort on Blake Snell at this point. And, I'm hoping he doesn't sign with the Giants, but, it would make sense for a lot of reasons, including the way Dodger fans feel about Blake Snell. I think he is a perfect fit for the Giants. But, it continues a trend for the Giants of not getting their man. They had their eyes on all 3 of these Japanese players, and they haven't signed any of them. They haven't really signed. I mean, they signed Lee from Korea, Jung-Hoo Lee, and he's a very good hitter. But that's really all they've done this offseason as far as big moves go. They did trade for Robbie Ray, which the jury is still out on that one. If I was on the jury, I would be voting in favor of not the big deal they hoped it was. And that's what I'm hoping. I hope the Dodgers can knock Robbie Ray around a little bit in a Giants uniform, like they did once in a while when he was in the D-backs uniform. But, that's the Imanaga news, and it will be interesting to see the ripple effect it has on the rest of free agency as the Giants pivot to other players, the Angels pivot to other players. Angels are also going to have their eyes on Blake Snell, so only so many free agents to go around, and another one is off the board, which means there will be more movement for the rest of them. And speaking of free agent movement, we're going to come back in a minute. We're going to talk about the MLB offseason and whether it needs to be tweaked to add a little bit more excitement. So thanks for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen, and please keep it Locked On Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by Jase Medical. Look, I know we come to sports to escape from some of the crazy realities of real life, but can we just talk for a minute about preparing for real life? According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. This is scary. I can't imagine a more helpless feeling than if my wife or one of my kids got sick while a supply chain issue kept them from the life-saving medication they needed. Thankfully, my family will be okay because of Jase Medical. We got the Jase case. The Jase case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinusitis, skin infections, among others. This stuff could happen to any of us. So you can visit jasemedical.com, just like I did, and you can complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. So go to jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com, and use offer code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. Check out jasemedical.com today. And back, I want to thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Remember to check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles on YouTube. They're both streaming 24/7 from the Locked On Podcast Network. And be sure to become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/Locked On Dodgers. It's a lot of fun over there too. Speaking of a lot of fun, the MLB offseason sometimes is a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun for us Dodger fans this offseason for sure. And if you, I'm going to read you a tweet. My buddy Ben Kaspick, he's the host of Locked On Giants, and I just got done talking about how the Giants have had a kind of rough offseason so far. But I don't think this is a sour grapes tweet from Ben. I think the opinion he expresses, a lot of people share, including maybe a lot of people listening right now. I don't share it, and so I'm going to talk about why I disagree. But like I say, at the end of every episode, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. So you can disagree with me, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. He said, I say this as someone who's as obsessed with baseball as possible. The MLB offseason is the absolute worst. A 3 to 4 week deadline for multi-year deals is the best idea I've heard to fix it. Basically, he and others like him want to condense the MLB offseason, the signing period down. And an example a lot of people use is the NBA. NBA, as soon as free agency opens, there's like a frenzy of signings and boom, 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 got off the board. It's a very exciting couple days. And I understand the appeal of that kind of excitement. Here's where I disagree. Think about the rest of the offseason. And that's like, after that frenzy, it's just dead time. And what we have right now in baseball, yeah, it is, there's a lot of, it's drawn out, et cetera, but at least it's exciting while you're waiting. Okay, Blake Snell, reigning National League Cy Young Award winner, still hasn't signed for next year. So we don't know. That's still something to think about, something to be excited about. If you're a team that's in the market for a pitcher, it's something to anticipate. And, he and others said, he said, when I told him I disagree, he said, well, this has been the best offseason in Dodgers history, so you're kind of disqualified. But even in years like last year, the Dodgers didn't really sign many players. They signed Jason Hayward, and it wasn't a big offseason for them. It was a very slow offseason for them. And yet it was still, for me, the most boring part of the offseason last year is the fact that so many guys did sign during the winter meetings. And so Trey Turner was off the board, and Dansby Swanson was off the board, and Cody Bellinger was off the board. And, all these people were no longer available. And so last year I would have preferred if things had gone slower, so that there still would have been the anticipation, the excitement, the drama of who's going to sign where. And one of the reasons, I think the main reason basketball, there is such a frenzy, is because they have a salary cap. There's some exceptions to the salary cap, but there are all basically, when somebody becomes a free agent, he knows exactly, okay, how much can each team offer me? And so there's not bidding wars. It's who do I want to play for? Because I'm going to get the same money from pretty much everybody. So who do I want to play for? And so it's a really easy decision. You can't really go back and forth and say, well, this team offered me this much. Can you beat that? Hey, these two teams offered me that much. Can you beat that? Because the salary cap means that everybody's kind of limited to the same basic offer. NFL, salary cap also, same kind of idea. Major League Baseball with no salary cap means that you can have things where, like, hey, let's talk about a crazy $700 million deal with 97% of it deferred. That sort of thing. You don't have those conversations in other sports. And so it does go back and forth. Shohei Ohtani signed early-ish this offseason because that was his preference. A couple of years ago, back in offseason of 2018 to 2019, Manny Machado and Bryce Harper both signed way late. Harper, at least, was already, spring training already started. I don't remember exactly when Machado signed, but it wasn't long before that. And so that kept things exciting all offseason. It was frustrating at times, and it was frustrating for other players because some players wanted the market to be set by Machado and Harper, but those players end up just having to do their own thing. And for me, it's not worth it to have those couple days of frenzy and then have 3 months of dead time before spring training starts. For me, I love how drawn out it is and how there is that ongoing drama. Will they or won't they? Who will, like Blake Snell, for me, is a really fun example that he is coming off a Cy Young Award. There's drama of, is he overvaluing himself? There's the drama of so many of the remaining free agents being Scott Boras clients, including Snell. I think Snell is. Anyway, a lot of them are. And so all of these storylines keep playing in. And as soon as they sign, that storyline's over. And yeah, you then start talking about, what does that player mean to the team he signed with? But then it's just a story for one team. And so, yes, this year has been an exciting and action-packed offseason for the Dodgers. And so I understand why people would think that that's why I have my opinion. But I've said this in previous years, and I'll say it again. Next time the Dodgers don't have an exciting offseason, I much prefer this. And part of it is because I am a person who talks about baseball 5 days a week. And if I had to, if this podcast was reporting 18 signings in a week and then nothing for the next 3 months, it's not as fun of a podcast either. This way, like having things to talk about, things to think about. And for me as a sports fan, and maybe it might be different for me because baseball is the only sport I care about. And so NFL, like I think I've watched a total of an hour of NFL football this season, if that. And so it's like, yeah, I don't care. The NBA is going on. I don't know that I've watched any NBA yet this offseason. Hardly watched any college football. Like baseball is what I care about. And so I like that from the end of October to the middle of February, when there's no actual baseball happening, there is free agency going on, and it has its ebbs and flows. But I like it that way. I like that it's a steady, if slow, drip of baseball news and baseball rumors and baseball drama. And for me, that makes it totally worth it. And so from a snooty point of view, I think baseball is the best. And anything that is designed to make baseball more like a different sport, I don't really like. And so, I think if baseball had a salary cap, we would see more action, more condensed, because there would be limits. But even then, I guess it would depend on what the salary cap was, and there's never going to be a salary cap in baseball. So at least not anytime soon. So it's probably not even worth thinking about, but that is why it's so condensed in other sports because of the salary cap. And, I like it the way it is. And not just because I don't mind change. And if I thought it would be better, I'd be in favor of it. I was, strongly in favor of the pitch clock, which was changed. I loved most of the changes Major League Baseball made last year. I don't like change for the sake of change. And I do think that people who are in favor of the more condensed signing period would realize, that makes the rest of the offseason really boring. And, if you're somebody who just wants to stop thinking about it for a couple months, that makes sense. But for me, I want to have something to think about and talk about all off season long. And so I like it the way it is. And with that said, I think that's going to do it for me. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the YouTube comment section. If you are watching this on YouTube, if you listen on the podcast, I'd love to hear from you through social media or anything. I'll give you all that contact info in a second. Want to thank our everydayers for being with us every weekday morning. If you're not an everydayer, it's easy to become one. Just watch or listen every weekday morning. Remember to check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, the two 24/7 streaming channels on YouTube from the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Remember to become a Locked On Dodgers insider at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. It's just a few bucks a month to support us, and there's a free 14-day trial. It's a lot of fun. You can follow us on Instagram and on Twitter at Locked On Dodgers. Vince is on Twitter at VinceSins91. I'm on Twitter at Snydog, and both of our DMs are open there. You can also email us, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or you can send us a voicemail or a text message at 323-863-LOCK, 5625. We are here every weekday morning. We hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or sit on your couch, tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. We'll talk to you tomorrow.